let me tell you first of all who Margaret was. She was called Margaret Forster, Forster, which is a very strong, old, established border name. And so Walter Scott wrote a poem called Young Lochinvar. Young Lochinvar, they rode and they ran, the Forsters and the Phoenix, blah, blah, blah. Now when I meet my friend Melvin Bragg, I said, there are not any Braggs mentioned in Young Lochinvar. You're not really coming in, whereas the Fosters are in there. So, hands up anybody who read any of Margaret's books. Oh, lots of graduate wives here this evening, I can see. Intelligent, clever people. What? You got one with me? I'll sign it in absentia. So she wrote about 20 novels and about 10 biographies. She was much more distinguished than me, much cleverer than me, much more beautiful than me, but she was reclusive. So I'm telling you, this book is Letters to Margaret. Margaret with George Best. Okay, it's me. Can you see? People used to say to George Best, you know, you look like Hunter Davies. Everybody had that sort of hairstyle at the time. Margaret's wearing, I think, a Mary Quant raincoat. Margaret, when we got married, she spent 6 months, and we lived in this flat. She spent 6 months writing a book. And she sent it off to an agent who said, no, it won't work the way it is. Come and see me. And she tore up the letter and got a job as a teacher, a supply teacher. And for 18 months we both saved like billiard, me and my job, and in 18 months we'd saved £1,500 with no capital. Margaret actually was social climber when she married me, because her council house had an outside lavatory. My council house had an indoor lavatory, and her dad wore a bowler suit to work because he worked in a factory, whereas my dad was a very, very senior, a very junior civil servant, and he wore a suit to work, so she did well for herself, didn't she? Anyway, Margaret then wrote another book, and this was called Georgia Girl, and this became a film, and she wrote the screenplay. And this is Margaret on the set of the film. But who's this gentleman here? You'll give away your age if you know who it is. That's one of the most famous English. What's that? You don't know. Miranda's mouthing something. No, it's not Sean Connery. It's James Mason. Remember James Mason? Oh, he's the most lovely film star. Beautiful. He's spoken. And this here is Lynn Redgrave, who was the sister of Versa Redgrave, and she died right. So it was a brilliant film. It was actually in black and white. Have you ever seen the film Georgia Girl? Yes. It had a song, Hey there, Georgia Girl. I can't sing. The year afterwards, my first novel became a film as well. Can you believe it? 2 of us from Kansas State having Hollywood films. Mine was called He Would Go Round the Mulberry Bush. The script was rubbish, written by me, but we had the most brilliant music by Traffic, Spencer David and Stevie Winwood. I then did the Beatles biography, and it came out in 1968, and I'd written 3 books by then. Margaret had written 3 books, and we're absolutely knackered. And we went abroad for a year with our 2 children. Our 2 children were 4 and 2. And therefore they weren't at primary school yet. So we went abroad and we took a house in Portugal, in the Algarve, in Praia da Luz. Do you know what Praia da Luz is? It's the place from whence that poor little girl got abducted. I've forgotten her name. And in the middle of the night, in December 1968, when we were living in Portugal, in this rented house, the most stunning house, converted sardine factory, and we had a cook and a chef, a gardener and a cook. And in the middle of the night, I heard a taxi drawing up outside the house, and I heard a screech of brakes, and I heard somebody with a horribly vulgar working class Scouse accent shouting, "Get up, Hunter Davies, you lazy bugger." And I thought it was John, because John had a very pronounced Scouse accent. And I opened the door, it was Paul McCartney with a beard. And he had with him a blonde American girl called Linda, and I'd never seen her in my life before. When we left London 6 months earlier, he was engaged to Jane Asher. Remember Jane Asher? Yes. And so he's arrived with this girl whom he just met in London. And she had a daughter, Heather, by a previous relationship. And this was the first few weeks of their romance. And he was thinking, well, I would like to take Linda on holiday. And he thought, because I had two little children roughly the same age, he said, let's go and see Hunter. When I was doing the Beatles book, over 2 years, they came to my house all the time, and I went to their house. I met their mums and dads, all dead. I met Brian Epstein, dead. I met George Martin. I met so many people. The biggest regret of my life in doing that book is that I never used a tape recorder. I would have a wonderful archive. I got the parents who died long ago, memoirs and memoirs of their sons, and the whole background, all about them. And I've only got it in notebook, but the notebook is lovely. So this is us. Paul and Linda stayed with us for 2 weeks. So that's me now with a 21-inch waist. That's Jake, our son. That's Linda. That's Paul with a bit. And this is Margaret. If you look carefully at her, we've left London 6 months ago, and she still has a Vidal Sassoon haircut. If you remember, you're all too young to remember, Vidal Sassoon had geometric crops like this. She's also wearing a Mary Quant dress, not a frock, a dress. Can you see, it goes up right up to her thigh there, can you see? And it was a zip down, it was very fashionable and smart. The colour was mushroom. When I first came to London and worked on the Sunday Times with all these posh shows, one of my many giveaway words was castle and bath and mushroom. So they stayed for 2 weeks, and we took them round to Montchique and the Algarve, and Paul hired a car so he could drive with us. They absolutely adored, all 3 children adored Paul. He was lovely with young children and babies. John was useless, he didn't know what to do. Anyway, Paul hired a car, and we're driving up the mountains one day, and his car overtook me. And driving the car was Caitlin, age 4, sitting on his knees. And I picked her, I said, what the fuck are you doing? That's a child driving the car. Oh, they've got through there. I said, she's only 4. Anyway, they stayed with us for, while they were with us, I put them into our bed, Linda and Paul, because we had an ensuite bathroom. And me and Margaret moved into the guest bedroom, and all the children slept together, what we call the nursery. A couple of years ago, I was at a party at Paul's with Peter Blake and his brother and his dentist, a private party, and his daughters were there. Mary, who's the famous designer, and his older one was called Stella, and she's a photographer. And I hadn't seen them for about 5 or 10 years, because when Paul was married to Heather Mills, Heather cut Paul off from all his old friends. So I didn't get a Christmas card. Whereas when Linda was alive, for the 30 years, we got invited to parties, presents, cards. She took the children in with them. Anyway, what I was going to say now. What was I starting to say?
The bedroom.
About the what?
Bedroom.
Oh yeah, Mary. So I saw Mary at this party, and I hadn't seen Mary since she was a little girl. And I said to Mary, you were conceived in my bed. And she said, what? I said, yes, your mum and dad came to stay with us in December 1968, and I gave them our bed, our marital bed. And you were born exactly 9 months later. And she said, that's right. And she gave me a cut and said, you must be my, she couldn't think of the word, my step-godfather. Caitlin is now grown up. You can't believe it, she's 60. And she's a writer and writes books. Jake is now a barrister.